guess what? We're back at the forge. I have limited use of the left hand, so we're going to try and get back to doing some hot work. And today, I thought we'd start with one of those blacksmithing classics, the dinner bell. And no, chow's not on, it's still morning, maybe at lunchtime. We're still a long way from full recovery. The stitches are out. I can exercise the finger very lightly, although it's quite uncomfortable to do so. But I have permission to come back in the shop as long as I have a compression wrap on the finger to help limit swelling. Don't overdo it, and I have to wear a glove anytime I'm doing anything. So that's where we're at now. So we're going to be quite limited because I really can't squeeze very hard with this hand, and things are a little bit slippery in the glove anyways. But we can do some work. And the dinner triangle is a nice simple project. It's a good Christmas gift idea. We're only a week before Christmas, so if you have time and it's for a local gift and you don't have to mail it, this is still something you can get done for a gift idea for the holiday season. So what are we going to work with? My starting point for this triangle is a 3-foot length of 1/2 inch round bar. This is just hot rolled mild steel, nothing special. And we're going to go ahead and put that in the forge and start heating one end. And I'll show you on one of the completed triangles just what I'm going to do to the ends. Now we could certainly just leave the bar blunt. The bell itself doesn't care. But I just don't like that. I like just some sort of a little detail to show that this was done by a blacksmith as opposed to done by somebody that just bent it with a torch. And quite frankly, we are just going to bend this with a torch when we're done. So there's very little active forging in the triangle itself. Now you could do these as little scrolls. You could do little figureheads, leaves, whatever you want to do on those. Keep in mind that there are a lot of vibrations that happen in this, and that anything with a sharp corner might stress crack over time because of the vibration of the bell. I've never experienced that, but I think it's a risk. To achieve the little detail that I like, it's really just kind of a blunt point to start with. And then I flatten that out. What we end up with is kind of a chisel point or something vaguely chisel-like. It's a little bit round on the end, just does that kind of naturally. And that's really all I'm going for. Make it even and symmetrical. Then I want to just give it a nice graceful recurve here. Again, this is 100% aesthetic. It has nothing to do with the function of the dinner bell. It's just because I like it to look like a blacksmith made it, and it wasn't just a home hobby shop or welding shop or whatever. Fairly simple little detail there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end, but before I get to that, I don't really like the look of factory steel. It's just too clean, too sterile, too boring. So I also don't like just gratuitously beating stuff up with a ball-peen hammer. So what I'm going to do is just lightly forge this. Mostly I'm heating it in the forge to get some scale on this. And we'll very lightly forge it just to give it a few little facets. It's easy to go too far, and less is more in this case. So it's not just gratuitous hammering, it's just very light texturing. Just very light texturing. If I work it here at the step, I You can work it into the corner, and that helps keep it round and it doesn't get all wonky. But also, this step has been used by a previous owner as a cutting table, so it's full of chisel marks, and that adds a little texture. And it collects scale when I work, and the scale adds a little texture. So just very light, nothing too serious here. And we're going to let this cool. I've done about half of it, and then we'll turn it around and do the other half. We'll do the same thing to the other end. Starts off as a little blunt point. You notice I don't have as good a control over the bar as I would like to. It slides around in my hand a bit. That's just because I don't have the ability to grip it like I normally would. But I think we can deal with it. So that's really about all we need to do to that. Now you want to make it the same as the other end. Sometimes it's hard to leave well enough alone. And you also want it in a line so that the flats are in the same plane. If they aren't, we can deal with that, and I'll show you how, but ideally you get those in the same plane. Now we're going to go back to the horn to create that little bit of a recurve. Try and keep everything flat. It kind of wants to twist a little bit when you do this. So that's really all we're after there, or all I'm after. Like I say, you can do any number of things to this. Now we're going to go ahead and texture the other half of the bar. Just very lightly texture this. We're just creating a few subtle facets so it reflects light a little bit differently. It drives a little scale in there to add some texture, but mostly it just disrupts that overly sterile factory finish. Wire brush the scale that forms on it off because you don't need that. I've got about that much more to do. So I'm happy with everything we've done there. At this point, you just want to take a little bit of time and make sure it's straight. You can do a fair amount of straightening cold, but if you can get it while it's hot, you might as well. So that's pretty good. We're going to let that cool, and then we're going to use the torch to bend it. And I'm going to do that just because it's way easier than using the gas forge, which is what I'm working in right now. So just after telling you we should try to keep these in the same plane from one end to the other, they're 180 degrees off. They're in a straight line, but I wanted this one to face the same direction as this one. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but that one goes this way and this one goes that way. So we're going to have to put a twist. There's an advantage to round bar, is that we can twist this and round bar stays round. Unlike square bar, you'd have that obvious twist and we'd have to just go back and reforge the end, which also would not be a big deal. Since I've shut the forge off, I'm just going to go ahead and do this twist with a torch. can certainly put this back in the forge and heat it to do the twist and the bends. We'll discuss that as we do the bends. But this is really a pretty simple thing to fix, and it'll probably never show in the finished product. You can't tell that that was twisted at all. The bar is centered in the vise more or less, and it'll be able to just stay there while we do our bends, which is one advantage to using the torch. The bar overall is 38 inches, so that's 12.6 inches per bend. And I do like the middle section a hair longer because I don't want the ends to touch and rattle in use. So I'm going to go 12.5 inches from each end and make myself a little mark. That way I know where to heat with the torch. That's just marked with soapstone. I want to heat about 1.5 inches centered on this point here. The longer you heat, the larger a bend you'll have, and the shorter you heat, the tighter of a bend you'll have. I don't think there's anything magical about that size. It's just an aesthetic preference for how big a radius you want. And because that's a relatively long bar and I'm wearing this nice hot mill glove, I can just grab that with my hand. If you can't grab it with your hand, you could grab it with a bending fork or use a pair of tongs. Then I have this little piece of sheet metal here that I can almost grip in this hand. It's just a piece of 1/8 inch that is cut with a 60-degree angle, and I can compare that to the inside there and get my angle pretty accurate. We'll do the same thing to this end. This is a real advantage to a torch, is being able to do these little localized controlled bends. I can get the angles the same in both places. Now this could close up just a little bit more, I think. I think that should not be that open. So let's bring this in just a little bit more on both sides. It'll change our angles a little bit. And I think what I'll do is I'll heat it back in here, and that will shorten this back section just a hair. Okay, I'm leaving a gap here. There's about a 1/4 to 3/8 gap right there. The other thing we want to do is make sure that it's in a plane here and flat, and these legs aren't doing all sorts of weird things. And that looks pretty good, but if not, adjust them up and down. If it's starting to get hot, grab it with a pair of tongs. Don't burn yourself. But that's pretty much all there is to bending that. wire brush off the corners, get that scale from the torch off of there. The only other thing I'm going to do to this, I think, is probably going to wax it when we're all done. Well, the triangle part is really pretty simple. That's really all there is to it. Like I say, I'll probably put some wax on it. And I've got one other thing I want to try once we get to that point. But we'll talk about an idea I have for making them ring better, and we'll see if I'm right or not. But for now, you got to have something to ring it with, because it doesn't make any noise with just hanging out in the air there. So I've got some 3/8 bar, and of course it also doesn't ring if you hold on to it. You have to hang it from a piece of cord of some sort. So I've got some 3/8 round bar. Let's make a clanger for it, or whatever it's called. Typically I would draw this out at the anvil because it's just 3/8, but I have much better control with my right hand on the tongs than I do holding this thin round bar in my left hand. I just want to draw a little taper. We're going to put a ring on the end of the clanger so it can hang on a hook. Taper looks better. Again, this is purely aesthetic. You can make these however you want. So that's drawn out as a square. And it's about time to get it hot again. So now we want to make an octagon out of that. And then we want to take it to round. You could certainly make these out of a much heavier bar with a punched hole for a ring and then draw the bar out. Just do all sorts of decorative stuff. Square bar with twists looks good. We're just keeping this fairly straightforward and simple. But it's a good chance for you to practice drawing out a nice taper and making it a nice round taper. And we're going to put a little rat tail on the end of this and then round it on up. So I'm going to put just a little bit of a curl in that. I'm going to cool off the curly cue just in case I hit it with a hammer, and that'll keep us from distorting that. Start by bending backwards so that your ring ends up about centered when you're done. Again, I will apologize for being a little bit uncoordinated. It's amazing how much I rely on that index finger. I think we better get that hot again. So just a nice little round ring there. Get as round as you can. Now the next question then is, how long do we want this? Personally, I think it looks about right if it's about the same length as one leg of the triangle or a little bit shorter. You need enough so it's comfortable to get in there and ring the bell, but too much just looks, I don't know, it just looks weird to me. So that's not terrible, but I think I'm going to cut a little off, and then I'm going to put just a very slight taper in the round bar. So I'm going to cut an 1.5 or 2 inches off of that. So I use the guillotine tool here to cut about 1.5 or 2 inches off of this. This cuts a one-sided bevel. Usually it's on the, you cut something flat, but I wanted to cut this to that little point because I think it'll finish off just a hair nicer. We're just going to do a very light taper on this, maybe to 5/16 at the end, just to make it a little bit more graceful. We need to round that up. Make sure it's straight. Got a little bit of a rag there from cutting it, so I'll need to file that off. Not much of a taper, but I think it makes it look just a little bit better. Now this is as simple as I think I would ever go. You could do these as complicated as you wanted to. I did one, if you go back and look at our poker video with the poker, the shovel, the brush that had the ring handle and the reverse twist and the square bar, I did one like that. It was really very nice. But I'm trying to keep these at a budget point so that people might be interested in buying them, so I'm going to keep it fairly simple. But use your imagination, ram's heads, dragon's heads, whatever you want. This is the piece that's easier to ornament than the triangle itself is. I've actually made 2 of these dinner bells, and what I want to do is a side-by-side comparison to see which one, or to try a technique that somebody once proposed to me, and see if that changes the way it rings. Frankly, I'm pretty happy with the way that one rings already. So I don't know if this trick is going to really be a trick or just a waste of time. That one rings pretty well also. That one's a little less symmetrical. Sometimes they hang better from one side than they do the other. So the trick is to heat it up and get it as warm as we can. A dull red, ideally everything, but I don't think we're going to be able to get it all in the gas forge to do that, and then quench it. So we'll try to get at least the corners hot, quench it, and then see what happens. See if it rings any different, and we'll leave one unquenched, and then we can compare the two. One of the problems with the gas forge is things like this just don't ever fit back in the door. A coal forge, you can put this on top of the coals and bank the fire in around it, and you can get all this hot pretty readily. We can also heat it up with a torch. I think we'll just do this and see if it makes much difference. Now this is just mild steel, so it shouldn't actually harden. We're just going to quench it and cool it off. And I don't know if that really makes a difference or not, but we're going to find out here. Now you really do need to hang these from something. So a piece of string or a rope or whatever. My first impression is that didn't make a bit of difference. So we'll go to the one that we didn't quench. If anything, I think I like that better. So I'm not going to worry about quenching them. I don't know if that really makes any difference in the long run, but It sure didn't sound like it to me. So I've got these hopefully hot enough to melt some wax on. Looks pretty good. Just hot enough to smoke is ideal. That just makes them look a lot better. And will protect them for rust because these usually hang outside. So let's even out the wax coating here. Let's wipe it off, get all the excess off. One advantage to having to wear the hot metal glove on this left hand is stuff at this temperature I can still hold on to. But then again, I like these hot metal gloves anyways. So there's our little triangle. That's sure to get them in for lunch or dinner. It's lunchtime for me. It's after 1 o'clock, so I think I'm going to go in. It's a nice, simple little project, a cute gift idea, good for the craft shows. If you do some sort of summer events where people are barbecuing, they'd probably love these things. Don't be stuck on my measurements or my design. Go out and use your imagination and see what you can do for yourself. Have fun with it. There's lots of variations you could do with these. Try different materials. Smaller bell maybe out of 3/8 round bar, or a larger bell maybe out of 5/8 round bar, and see how they ring differently. But that's about all I've got for today. I'm probably working at about quarter speed right now because of the hand, but it is getting better, and I can take the glove off now that I'm done working. So it's just this little wrap. The stitches are all out. The doctor says it's probably going to be a full year before it's 100%, but I'm allowed to work again. Smitty likes being back in the shop. He usually doesn't come up and pose for the camera. Of course, he's going to give you the rear end shot there. But anyways, you have a good day. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. We're going to try and get back to doing a lot more hot forging instead of just talking about stuff. But there will still be a little bit of both. The other day I talked about the Devils Blacksmith project. And it turns out that the Devils Blacksmith Facebook page and Instagram page is not what they're using mostly now. They're using one under the name of Blacksmith Videos. So look for that, and I'll try to link to that in the description here. I still encourage you to take a look at that project. I think that it's one very worthy of our support. So maybe I'll put a link up here or down here somewhere so you can find that project again. Take care. Stay safe.